he was talking about deporting 10 to 16 million people from the States. They're now talking about deporting 100 million people from the States. That was on their sort of New Year Homeland Security website.
The story was never supposed to end like this, but somehow it did. A chaotic immigration crackdown, masked agents, conflicting official statements, and now a dead American citizen at the center of it all. What happened in Minneapolis isn't just another headline. It's a warning flare about how quickly power, fear, and narrative control can collide. Before we jump in, tell me where you're tuning in from. And remember to like and subscribe. Your support helps the channel grow and keeps these stories coming. This is The Collar Autopsy. Because once you look past the press releases and actually watch what unfolded on the ground, the official story starts to wobble, and the questions get a lot harder to ignore. Let's watch together, and I'll give my thoughts at the end.
Emily Maitlis is here, co-host of the Global Podcast The News Agents, just back really from Minneapolis. I mean, this couldn't have got any worse, really, could it, this situation?
They really picked the wrong guy. They picked a 37-year-old intensive care unit nurse, a man who'd worked closely with the veterans. One of the last videos that we've seen of Alex Pretti has him honouring veterans in the hospital, talking about the importance of freedoms and liberties secured. And he had gone to the rescue of a woman who was on the ground when he was fatally shot by ICE agents. And everything that we saw last week, frankly, led up to this point. It was so inevitable that there were going to be more clashes. It was so inevitable that innocent people were going to get killed. And what we found when we were on the ground with the sort of support teams, Minneapolis communities, was how much of their fundraising was going on dash cams. In other words, cameras that would provide the evidence for people to see what was actually happening.
And that makes a lot of sense now, doesn't it?
Now, look, you know what the Department of Homeland Security, the Trump administration, have come out with. They've said that Pretti approached ICE agents with a semi-automatic handgun with the intent to massacre them, right? They accused him of brandishing his weapon. There have been, as a result of these videos, as a result of the sort of the not just the dash cams, but all the sort of video evidence that people have now pooled because they realise that is the way you hold on to the truth in these situations. You can now see the shooting of Alex Pretti, appalling as it sounds, from many different angles, none of which we have seen so far have any evidence whatsoever that he was brandishing a weapon or that he took his gun out. In fact, from what we understand, the gun was removed before he was shot.
And the image, both the moving and the still image that horrified me the most, I mean, the whole thing is very distressing to watch, but the still image where he is leaning on one hand, he's on his knees, he's leaning on one hand, he's already been beaten to a pulp really very quickly, and he's trying to, you can clearly see he's clearly about to try and stand up. And at that point, he's shot 10 times, and I think at least 5 of those bullets were at some distance away once he'd already been shot fatally.
I mean, the idea that they mistook his phone for a gun, is that logical in this day and age? If you actually think, I mean, do you remember all those cases in the past where they've gone to sort of, police investigations and it's like, oh, he was carrying a chair leg, but it was dark.
I remember that one.
Do you remember that one?
I do.
Oh, he was, and even when you're
or a fake gun,
or sometimes you can be with a camera crew and they say, be very careful how you're carrying your camera, because even that can look. But in this day and age, in broad daylight, don't tell me that you're going to shoot everyone who's got a phone out because it might be a gun.
But they clearly fear the smartphone, not because they think it's a gun. They fear the smartphone because it's where the evidence is. And they started to take smartphones off people, didn't they, immediately afterwards?
Yeah. Well, after he was dead, they left the scene.
Yeah.
And they left the scene. Yes, they want to remove the evidence. Again, this all goes back to the same question, which is, if you are operating within the law, within the Constitution, take your masks off, show what you're doing, welcome investigations into your own people. Allow protest and allow a process. But this is now looking like a dark army. This is now looking like, I know that people have used the word sort of Gestapo, secret police. I mean, there's nothing secret about them because we see them coming. We know that they're on the streets. But there is something deeply concerning about this private army.
Do you know what kept, when I watched the video probably too often for my own health yesterday, but from all those angles you talked about, but what kept coming into my mind almost like a mantra was I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and I'd still
get away
with it and not lose a single vote.
Which was what Trump said in 2015
and
before he was elected.
Maybe this is the moment. Maybe this proves that one way or another. And I know Trump didn't have the gun in his hand and all the rest of it, but it's as blatant as that, in my view, what happened in Minnesota.
I have to say that the people, I'm going to make you guess this, Sheila, who has come out to condemn the Trump administration over this killing and over their narrative about this?
Oh, because a few Republicans haven't they? But by your face, I don't think you're talking about
the NRA, the National Rifle Association.
Excellent.
The National Rifle Association is coming to the defence of the intensive care nurse because they say the sentiment from the First Assistant US Attorney General is dangerous and wrong. Responsible public voices should be awaiting a full investigation, not making generalisations and demonising law-abiding citizens. In other words, Minnesota is an open carry state. In other words, it's one of the states in the US where you are allowed to come out with a weapon. He had a weapon on him because he had a permit. He was a licensed gun holder. He did not brandish the weapon from any of the video evidence we've seen. And the NRA, in this sort of extraordinary horseshoe that sort of, the top of the NRA meets the ICU nurse because they want to protect citizens who are acting legally against ICE agents and administration that is fabricating lies and trying to distort the reality that people are seeing with their own eyes.
And they don't want to have a hitherto friendly president to them saying, oh, guns bad.
Right.
Guns good.
I mean, what is the message? I mean, to your point, which is this a turning point? Trump is hearing from a lot of those in his party, and he's certainly not oblivious to the polls, which show how many of the American people are now deeply suspicious of his immigration plans concerning ICE. I mean, the irony is that if he'd stuck to what he was doing on the southern border, he would have called this a win. If you can stop...
With justification.
With justification. You could say, you told me immigration was an important part of what I did.
You stopped the flow of people.
I've stopped the flow of people coming in. But I remember, we talked about this, but the convention in Madison, Wisconsin in 2024 had these signs that people had on their chairs and it said mass deportation now. And I remember seeing it with my own eyes. I actually took one away because I was like, I don't believe, what is that? Are we really waving signs here saying mass deportation now? He was talking about deporting 10 to 16 million people from the States. They're now talking about deporting 100 million people from the States. That was on their sort of New Year Homeland Security website. I don't know what America looks like if that happens, but I do know that this is making many, many Americans feel deeply uneasy about the choices he's taking now.
It's interesting that the role of the Wall Street Journal and Trump in the last week has been interesting, hasn't it? Because typically favourable to him, but pushing on Greenland. And in an interview today, they managed to get him to say, we'll review everything. And he was asked about whether a fuller and freer investigation could happen, and also indicated he could withdraw agents from the city. Well, and then he'll claim it was always the plan. But
I mean, the Wall Street Journal, don't forget, was also the place that published the Trump birthday book card in Epstein's birthday book.
So they know how to kick him.
Well, he's denied that. He said it wasn't his signature, but they reported it in full. And when he threatened to sue them for $20 billion, they didn't back down. So, in other words, they are getting quite good at poking the bear and seeing how far they can go. They also did a report, I think, about his health with him, where he admitted how much aspirin he took and sort of, various things about his sort of medical state. They were asking about the bruises. They were asking about what was on his hands, what was going on with him. And so, I mean, he's an odd fellow, isn't he? Because he lambasts the press the whole time and then keeps going back for more, even to the places that he's kind of fallen out with.
Yeah. Do you think... I mean, it's hard to predict. It's all hard to predict, I suppose. But do you think we could see, particularly if the push comes from within the Republican Party as well, not just Tim Walz and the like, but do you think we could see him say... The
governor of Minnesota, the Democrat.
That Trump could say, OK, it's clearly going awry. We've had great successes.
He won't say that.
He won't say that.
He won't say it's going awry. He'll say, ICE have done a magnificent job. It's now OK for me to pull them out and put them somewhere else.
Okay.
I mean, one interesting fact that I heard from a Minnesota legislator, which is there are, I think they estimate, 98,000 illegal immigrants in Minnesota, a blue state, a very Democrat blue state. There are 2 million illegal immigrants in Texas, which Trump isn't going after at the moment. We're not seeing ICE on the streets of Texas because Texas voted for Trump. So there is so much in this which is just to do with peevishness and sort of begrudging the voters their vote in these places. But I think he will withdraw troops from. I think he probably has to, in the way that, do you remember in his first term he had the kids in cages policy? His immigration policy in April of 2018 was about separating kids from their parents, and at that stage I think it was Melania. This is what was reported afterwards. Melania, his wife, and Ivanka, his daughter, intervened and went, "This is not a good look. Like, stop the policy." Somebody around him.
They're all hard. This is not a good look.
They're all hard. but exactly, this is not a great look. But we're sort of waiting for that person to say, shooting intensive care veterans nurses is not a great look.
It is not a great look. On the illegal immigrants and, the numbers in different states, it's clear from the Minneapolis, particularly from Minneapolis, because it's where all eyes are on, that an awful lot of the people in detention and being picked up are being picked up in the course of legally observing the process.
Yeah.
And they're targeting people who are engaging with the American state in the right way, deliberately, and then just treating them as though they are murderous drug dealers.
Anyone who's been through an immigration process or who knows somebody who's been through an immigration process knows it doesn't happen overnight. There are long waits. You could be in a system for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years even.
Yeah.
And from the people that we were with, and the evidence we saw with our own eyes, people were getting picked up on the streets of Minneapolis, some of whom were actually working in high security areas like airports, where they would have had to be vetted.
Yeah.
They would have had to have their papers checked. They would have had to have been part of a process that was, a legalisation process.
Or they've made their way to a court to go and be,
Exactly. Their names are out there. They're on pieces of paper.
Yeah.
They're in the system. And those were people getting deported as well. So, and Alex Pretti himself, clearly an American citizen.
Yeah. And it was interesting, probably Thursday of last week, to see teachers come out and say, I have to speak out, head teachers coming out and saying, I have to speak out now, to see medical directors of hospitals saying, no, this is enough now.
A lot of businesses have shut.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, that's the one thing I would say which is extraordinary on the streets of Minneapolis is it's become incredibly cohesive for the communities.
Yeah.
When they fundraise, they fundraised for Alex Pretti and they were aiming for £20,000 and it was north of $1 million within the first day.
Yeah.
So people are converting their anger and their fear at the moment into something hugely constructive, which is a community-wide...
It is a proper community, clearly.
I think it's brought people together.
Yeah.
When you strip away the talking points and look at what's actually being discussed here, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't just a tragic mistake. It was the predictable outcome of an approach that prioritizes force over accountability. At the center of it all is Alex Pretti, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse, a licensed gun owner, a veteran supporter, and an American citizen. According to multiple videos reviewed from different angles, he wasn't charging anyone. He wasn't brandishing a weapon. He was trying to help someone who had fallen, and moments later, he was dead. The official response from the Department of Homeland Security came quickly, and it came confidently. They claimed he posed a lethal threat. But that narrative started to unravel almost immediately as footage surfaced. And instead of transparency, what followed were attempts to control the evidence, phones taken, scenes abandoned, and questions left unanswered. What unsettled many observers wasn't just the shooting itself, but the behavior around it. Masked agents, no visible accountability, and a growing sense that cameras, not weapons, were the real threat. Because smartphones don't fire back, they record. Then came the moment no one had on their bingo card. The National Rifle Association stepping in. Not to defend ICE, but to defend the rights of a licensed gun owner in an open carry state. Their message was simple but damning. Don't demonize citizens before an investigation is complete. When even the NRA is warning about reckless official rhetoric, something has gone badly off course. Politically, the fallout is just as telling. Polls are shifting. Immigration enforcement that once played well at rallies now looks very different when it unfolds in daylight, in blue cities, against people clearly inside the legal system. Nurses, teachers, airport workers, people with names on files and dates in court. Trump, ever sensitive to pressure, now says he's reviewing everything. The Wall Street Journal, typically friendly territory, pushed him there, raising the possibility of investigations, withdrawals, and quiet reversals. If history is any guide, any pullback will be framed as strategic, not reactive. But the reason will be obvious. Minneapolis itself tells another story, one of community response. Schools speaking out, hospitals drawing lines, businesses shutting their doors in protest, and a fundraising effort for Prey's family that exploded past expectations within hours. Fear and anger didn't dissolve the community, they consolidated it. In the end, this discussion isn't just about one shooting or one city. It's about whether enforcement can operate without scrutiny and whether a democracy accepts force without explanation. That's the question hanging over Minneapolis. And increasingly, it's the question hanging over the country. Give me your thoughts about this tragedy, and I will see you in my next video.